Hello and welcome back. In this part of the tutorial, we are going to implement the registration process. So when the user clicks on this register link here, a form should display which will enable the user to enter his details and submit it. So back in the header.html file here, I will define that URL. So I'll call this here register. And I'll create a controller that will handle the registration process. So in this package here, I'll right click and create a new class. And I'll call it register controller. I'll annotate it with @controller annotation. And next I'll create a method here that returns the form when a register request is submitted to the server. So public string, I'll call this register form. This should return the form which I'm going to create in a folder called views, and I'll call it register form. And this method should be responding to a GET request, and it is called register. We need to bind the input fields of the form to the user object. So I'll declare here a model and use it to pass a new user object to the form. So model.add attribute. I'll call it user, and this will be a new user object. So now let's create this form. So I'll right click on the templates folder here and create a new HTML file. And this should be in the views folder. And we call it the register form. Yeah, register form. Finish. So I'll just copy the content of the index.html file and paste it here. And also get rid of these. The title here should be register form. And here I'll add a form tag. I'll add a div here with a class of form group. Then I'll create a label with a class of form control label. And this should be a label for the email. So now I'll create an input field for this email and bind it to the email field of the user class. In order to do that, I need to first of all declare the object we just passed from the backend here. So th object, and we called it user. Then here I'll create the input field and give it a class of form control. So I'll type here th field to do the binding, and the field is called email. I'll also just add here an ID of email. So I'll copy this and repeat the same procedure for the name and the password field. So paste it here and change this here to password. and the type here should also be password. And I'll paste it once more time for the name. So this should be name, and name. And finally, we need a submit button. So input, the value here, I'll just call it submit, and I'll give this input a class of btn primary. So in the form action method here, I'll pass in a Thymeleaf URL expression, and I'll call it register. And this should be then th Thymeleaf. This form should send a post request. Now let's test this and see. I'll right click here and run as Java application. So back in the browser, I'll refresh this, and if I click on register, we should expect to see the form if everything works normally. We have an error, so let's check out what went wrong. Invalid property email. Oh yeah, I imported the wrong user object. So in the user controller class, this is supposed to be the user we created from org.sambasoft.entities. So I'll save this, then I'll refresh the browser again. Now if I click on register, we should get the registration form. So when the user fills up this form and clicks on submit, we should be able to process that. Let's go ahead and implement that in the register controller. So back in the register controller, the user should send a post request. Called register. Then we should handle it with this method, public string, or call it register user. We expect the user. Remember, in the user class, we added some validation annotations. So we want to make use of these now. And in order to do that, all we need to do is to add valid annotation in front of this user object. And next, I'll also pass here the binding result interface. Which will bind the exceptions to the view should in case the validation was not successful. So the first thing we need to check here is to see if there was any validation errors. So if binding result dot has errors, then we should return back the view and display those errors. So I'll just copy this here. So back in the register form view, I'll create a div that displays the error message for each of the input fields. So here I'll type div and give it a class of text danger. This is our bootstrap. And this should only display when something goes wrong with this input field. So I'll type here th if, and in Thymeleaf there is this fields object that we can use to check whether something went wrong with this input field. So to access the object, I'll type here the # Is it the pound? I am not quite sure. So fields dot has errors, and we're checking the error for the email field. So if that occurred, we can display the error like this: th errors email. And now we just copy this and repeat the same procedure for the other input fields. So this should be for the password, also here password, and finally for the name. Next, if there are no errors, then we need to check whether the user already exists. So for that, I'll start by injecting here the user service class. Auto-wired. And here I'll check if the user exists. So user service dot is user present. I'll pass in the user ID, which is the email in this case. And this method does not exist yet in the user service class, so let's create it. So here I'll basically do something like what we did here. I'll copy this and paste it here and get the user. If the user is not null, I'll return true. If not, a false will be returned. So if that is the case, that means if this is true, then again we should return the user form and display a message. For that, I will pass inside here the model. And in the model, I'll pass the following attribute. I'll just copy this one here and paste it here. And create an attribute here called exists and set it to true. And again, back in the register form, just above this form tag, I'll create a div with a class of alert info. And here I will check if that attribute exists is true. So th if exist, then whatsoever I'll put here will be displayed. So I'll just put here a paragraph with a class of text center, and here I'll type user with this email already exists. So if there are no errors and the user does not exist, then we are free to create the user. So user service dot create user and pass in the user. And after doing that, I want to return a view called success. So I'll copy this and once more paste it here and just change this to success. So once more, I'll copy the index.html file and paste it in the views folder and I'll rename it to success. Success.html. I'll get rid of this dummy text here. And here I'll rather have a class of alert success. And I'll just type here registration success. Please sign in to continue. This should be signed in. And finally, I'll test this out and see whether it's working or not. So first of all, make sure your database is running. I have my SQL started here, and back in the browser, I'll click on register, and we get the registration form as before. So I'll try to submit an empty form, and as you can see, we get the default validation messages. So this means that the validation is working. So let me try to break the rules again by submitting non-valid characters, and again we get these validation messages. Now let me try to create an actual user. So sambamedia@mail.com. My password is 123456. I made a mistake. 123456. Then my name is Samba Media. So if I submit this, you see we get registration successful, meaning that was successfully created. Let's try to create a user that already exists. So again, I'll try to submit Samba Media 123456. The name is Samba Media. And we get this message: user with this email already exists. Perfect. Now let's check whether all the information was inserted in the database. So I'll open the Apache admin panel and click on phpMyAdmin. And here in the database, we have the user table. And as you can see, a user with an email of sambamedia@mail.com and this name as well as a hash password was created. If you check in the roles, you see that sambamedia@mail.com is assigned the role of user. And again here, if I click on the role, you see the role user, and at the moment we have no task, so that is fine. And back inside here, I'm going to customize these validation messages. So to customize these validation messages, we can either do it directly on the annotations. Say here, if I want to set a message, I can set the message property and type in whatsoever message I want to display to the client. So that is one way of doing it, or through the use of a file that is called the messages.properties-file. So I'll right click in this resources folder and create that file, and that is where the file should be for Spring Boot to read it. I'll call it messages.properties. There is also a way to create a file that will respond to Spanish, to German, to English, and other like. I'll leave it like this. Say we want to set a validation message for the email. All we need to do is to type here email dot and then the name of the object. For example, this is the user class, so I'll type here user beginning with a small letter, dot, and then the name of the field that I want to validate. I want to validate the email field. So I'll type here dot email and set the message. So please enter a valid email. I'll copy this. And for the email, we said it should also not be empty here. So I'll then type here not empty. And for the name field, it should also not be empty. So I'll copy this and paste it here. This should then be the name field. I'll just type here, name cannot be empty. And finally, for the password, we said it should have a minimum length of 4. So that is size dot user dot password. So I'll type here password should be at least 4 characters. So this should be password. I'll save this, and back in the browser I'll test it out. So I'll click again on register for the form to reload. So the server is still starting. So that is done. I can refresh this again. So if I try to submit this form, you see we get the custom validation messages. So if for some reason you cannot see these messages, just stop the application and restart it again. So in the next tutorial, I'm going to implement the add tags functionality. Until then, see you.